Hello and welcome everyone to Immigration and Jobs Talkshow. I am Nipasa Pradhan, your host for today's session. And before we move ahead with our webinar that's lined up with our amazing guest today, I have this important disclaimer. That is, by watching our videos, you agree and understand that the information provided by our experts and attorneys, including comments and replies from users, is not legal advice. Use of information is at your own risk. Once again, folks, welcome to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show, and we are here to dive into today's topic of discussion. Yes, we are going to discuss about, USCIS has officially announced that it has reached the H-1B cap for fiscal year 2025. So, what does this mean for thousands of aspiring professionals and employers hoping to secure an H-1B visa? And to unpack this, we are going to have our guest for today, a regular face who makes it a point to join us every week. So, without further ado, please help me welcome Attorney Prashanthi Reddy from the Law Offices of Prashanthi Reddy. Thank you so much, Prashanthi, for joining us.
Hi, Nipasa. It's good to be back.
Yes, so maybe you could tell folks out there what can they expect from today's session.
I guess we're going to be talking about alternatives to the H-1B cap. That would be a major chunk because the now that the cap is over, you will not be able to be on a H-1 until next March because that's when the next cap starts. So now that the cap is completed and no further lotteries are going to be done as per the USCIS announcement, we have to find alternatives for work employment, right? So for employment, so work visas. What if there are any alternative work visas for employers as well as for employees? So we're going to discuss that, and we're going to discuss a little bit about, what is the scenario for the future, what changes, if any, are likely to be made. What are the good ways of making ensuring that you have a better chance in the cap, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Absolutely. So, friends, stay tuned and thank you for joining us. We are streaming live right now on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and also on X. So, please feel free to, participate in this conversation. Maybe you have some questions with regard to our topic today. So, please feel free to comment them. And another thing is, you can also join us in this discussion by dialing this number, which is displayed on the screen. And the number is 425-436-6335. And when they ask for the access code, dial in 988-888, and you will be able to jump in to this conversation. So, very happy to do this. And absolutely. So, whether you are an employer, a current visa holder, or someone considering applying in the future, this session is going to provide you insights and strategies to um, go through this complex landscape. So thank you so much, Prashanthi, for helping us today. And I think without further ado, let's go on with our questions. And I have this first one that is, with the USCIS announcing that the H-1B cap for 2025 has been reached, what does this mean for applicants who were, not selected in the lottery? And are there any alternative pathways for them to work in the US?
Yes, so they're not, they are alternative pathways that obviously they're not as good as the H1 and they're more limited in their nature. So let's go and see what the alternatives are to a H1. One is, of course, cap exempt H1. If you're not subject to the cap, how can you be a cap exempt? Is if you are, and if your employer or if you are an employer who is an institution of higher education, non-profit related or affiliated to an institution of higher education or a non-profit research organization. If you're one of these three, then you're cap exempt and you can file your H1 at any time. You're not subject to this so-called H1B cap. So if also you have to remember that not only are the direct employers are cap exempt, but also if you're an employee indirectly to an employer, that is, say you have a consulting company and the consulting company has a client who is cap exempt, then in those circumstances also your H1B petition would be a cap exempt petition. So that's something very important to keep in mind. The other alternative is, of course, you could file an O1 visa. O1 visas are generally reserved for individuals who have extraordinary ability in the sciences, and the arts, in education, in business or athletics. And by definition, not many people qualify for extraordinary ability because they are extraordinary. But where possible, it's good to review and see if you have if you qualify for an O1. Maybe if you are a researcher, you could more easily qualify for an O1 because it's easier to show that your research is extraordinary. Um, so, the O1 is definitely another option, but as I said, it's limited to only those who are extraordinary in their field. How do you show that you're extraordinary? You show that by showing that you're in the top 1%, say, of your field. That could be through, um, it could be through, newspaper clippings about you. It could be about peer review. So people that are top in their field, in the field that you're working, can give you a recommendation letter recommending that you are of extraordinary ability in your field. You could be a member of where membership requires of a certain organization where membership requires really high standards. You could be judging other people's work. You could have published, your articles in prestigious publications in your field. So there are many ways you could have received awards in your field. So there are many ways, as I said, of showing extraordinary ability. Other option is the L1. Intra-company transferee. So there is an L1A and there's L1B. L1B is for those employees who have specialized knowledge. It does not have to be proprietary, but it has to be knowledge that they cannot train, in 6 months or 1 year. Uh, it's usually helpful for L1B if maybe you have knowledge of the systems, the processes, or maybe you have knowledge of the domain of the end client, which is not easily obtainable without additional training. So if you worked in order for an L1, whether it be L1B or L1A, you should have a company in India and there should be a company in the US, and there has to be a relationship between the two. And the company in India, say, I'm just giving an example of India, should be transferring you as an intra-company transferee from India to the US. And to work at the US organization. So, as I said, L1B is one option where there's specialized knowledge. L1A is another option, which is for multinational, allows multinational companies to send their executives, top executives or managers. So, if you are L1A, you have to be top executive or managerial level positions, and you have to show documentary evidence that you worked in the company from the past 1 year, either in the specialized knowledge if you're L1B, or as a multinational executive if you're L1A. And you have to submit documentation, etc. So it's a very document heavy petition, the L1. The advantage of the L1A is that you qualify for EB1, and therefore you can file your green card under EB1. File an I-140 directly, you don't have to file labor cert. For the L1B category, unfortunately, it's not EB1, and you have to file a labor cert and an I-140, just as you would in a H-1B situation under EB2 or EB3. So that's L1. Now, there's certain country-specific work visas. So people belonging to a particular country can only get those work visas. For example, Canadian and Mexican nationals can get a TN visa. TN visa is available and is not subject to any cap. And it's fairly easy to obtain. You can apply at the border as long as you qualify under one of the designated occupations. The designated occupations for TN are available online, which if you want to check them out. And that list also has the educational credentials that are required for that particular position. So if you have those credentials, and if you are under one of the designated occupations, if your job is under the designated occupations, then you can get a T1 at the border, TN at the border. um, so for Canada, it's at the border. In Mexico, you'd have to actually file at the consulate. Another country specific is visa is H-1B1, which is same as the H-1B, but there's a special cap quota for it. I believe it's 10,000. And this is available for people who are from Singapore and Chile. Another visa available is the E3 for Australia. So if you're an Australian national, you can apply for an E3, which is very similar to a H1. You need to show specialty occupation. Again, you can go and apply directly at the consulate. You do not have to file a petition and get an approval from USCIS. And there's no cap again for the E3. So that's the E3. Then there's also E1 and E2. It is treaty trader and treaty investor. For countries, again, you can go online and check which countries this is applicable to. So if they have signed the treaty trader or treaty investor agreement, then you can bring your employee as a trader, treaty trader, or a treaty investor. Again, there's specific requirements for this. You have to show that the investment required has been transferred from the foreign company to the U.S. company. The amount of investment is really, it's got proportionality test, meaning that depends on what investment is needed by that particular industry. And the company has to have done significant, for a treaty trader visa, significant trade between the US and that foreign company. And the employees must have skills that are required for that particular trade. And investment is, you're required to invest a certain amount of money depending on the type of industry that you're in. So that's E1, E2, treaty trader, treaty investor. Again, no cap for that. The other option is the F1 OPT and CPT. OPT is two types: post completion OPT, and that's for 1 year after completion of your degree. And then there's STEM OPT, which is only available for people in the STEM field, and that's an additional 2 years after the completion of your post completion OPT of 1 year. You also have CPT, curricular practical training. This is available for students where the school requires you or allows you to take to get hired off campus, but prior approval is required. Usually, curricular practical training has to be related to the degree that you're studying. So that's CPT and OPT. So you have that as well. You can also file for a green card directly in EB1 for Indian nationals. And for people who are not from India and China, you can apply in EB2 and EB3 as well, because the priority dates are not that backlogged. You still do have to wait. You have to file the labor, I-140, and then file for the green card consular processing. And the National Visa Center will send you an application. You can pay the fee, upload documents, and then the consulate gets involved, and then they call you for an interview, and they will give you the green card if you qualify. So, unfortunately, this is, of course, only available for people who are not from the backlogged countries, China and India. All other countries, EB1 is sometimes current, EB2 is not that far behind, so it's easier to apply directly for that green card and not have to apply for a non-immigrant visa. And have to go through the lottery, etc. Of course, you can always wait for April 1 for the next lottery, and then you can file that. So that's an overview of what the alternatives are for a H-1B. Nipasa?
Yes, thank you so much, Prashanthi. I mean, those were great options, and folks out there, the Prashanthi has in detail mentioned, the different alternatives, alternative visas that you could apply for, and maybe to know which would be the best fit for you. It's always best to consult an attorney. So why not contact attorney Prashanthi Reddy herself, and you can do that by calling her on her number, and her phone number is 212-354-1010. You can also email her at prashanthi@reddyesq.com and go visit www.reddyesq.com to get to know more about Prashanthi Reddy and the law offices of Prashanthi Reddy. And at this moment, I'd like to say hello to Sneha and Ritika. Thank you so much for joining us with your questions. We are going to address them a little later in our show. And for now, Prashanthi, what are the next steps for individuals who have been selected in the H-1B lottery, and how should they prepare for their petition submission to maximize approval chances?
So once you've been selected in the lottery, since we've had two lotteries, most probably, you already know your results and you've most probably filed your petition, because even for the second lottery, the filing deadline was sometime in November. But for next year, if you do get picked, then it's very important that you follow these few guidelines that I'm going to tell you. Number one, ensure that you send the application out to the service center that is on your registration approval. So it's no longer based on your address or your employer's address. The address will be that you need to send out your petition will be on the lottery approval notice. So keep that in mind. Number two, make sure you send out your application within the given period. It's 90 days to send out your application, and the last date will be mentioned on your lottery approval. So make sure you keep track of that. Also, always important, don't send it in the last minute. Try and send it at least a month or 2 months in advance, so that for some reason, if the petition comes back because you did something wrong, then you have enough time to resend it again. Number four, make sure you send out the petition with the correct fees. Always important, because the fees are complicated. It depends on the number of employees. It depends on, so number of employees that the employer has. And also the asylum fee is applicable to some, it's not applicable to some. It's a lower fee for some. So again, it all depends on the number of employees that you have. So keep that in mind, and there are several different kinds of fees that are affected by the number of employees. So keep that in mind and submit the correct fees. Number five, what you should do is make sure that you send out a complete application. Make sure you fill out the forms completely, sign wherever required, uh, choose the correct boxes, review your case thoroughly to make sure that you've not checkmarked a wrong box, or not checkmarked a box, or forgotten to checkmark a box. Make sure you sign. Yeah, the attorney signs, the petitioner signs. There's no beneficiary signature required. Also, make sure that you submit all the documents that you need to submit for a H-1B, which includes status documents, includes documents about your company, where the person is going to work, POs and contracts, if applicable. Don't leave anything to chance. Try to avoid an RFE. Submit evaluation documents, degree certificates. These are beneficiary documents, because otherwise you'll get an RFE, and then the chances of approval are lower if you get an RFE. And also the processing time is higher. So you want to avoid getting that RFE if you can. So I think these are a few pointers to what you should do in order to successfully file your H-1B.
Thank you so much, Prashanthi, for those tips. And I'm sure they are going to be very, very beneficial for all our viewers out there who are, applying for their H-1B visa or have been selected, at least in the lottery. Thank you so much. Now, let's go on to our next question. And that is, what does hitting the H-1B cap so quickly in 2025 indicate about the demand for skilled foreign workers in the US job market?
Well, it means that there is a high demand for skilled workers in the US market. There's still a high demand despite the layoffs that we see in the IT industry. There is still an extremely high demand, which means that there are not sufficient US workers to fill those jobs. Otherwise, they would not be looking for foreign workers, because, as per Labor Department rules, the foreign workers have to be paid just as much as the US workers. So they have no incentive to look for foreign workers other than the fact that there are no US citizens available, for the job. Um, so, otherwise consulting companies could just hire US citizens and then contract them out to other companies, rather than looking for H-1Bs. So, and that's not necessarily the case. As I said, there's no availability of US citizens for a lot of these STEM related jobs, and definitely in the healthcare industry as well. So, I just wanted to take this a little further, and what does it mean that the cap is being hit? What does it mean for the job market that H-1B numbers are no longer available? What does it mean for the job market that H-1B numbers are limited even? So, just to answer that, we have to figure out first whether limiting, uh, expanding H-1B numbers will help American workers or will hurt American workers, right? So there's always talk about the H-1B numbers have to be increased, but on the other side says that increasing H-1B numbers will hurt American workers. So what are the facts of this? There are a lot of research that's being done on this, and economists have done research. There are several papers written on it, and in fact, the research shows that hiring the hiring more H-1B workers, in fact, improves the job market for American citizens, because this is how it works. If there is no job available for a particular STEM position, then that job tends to go overseas, right? Microsoft has started its operations in Canada and all over the world because they're having problems with the H1s and finding the right talent. So they're looking for that talent elsewhere outside the country. But if they found that worker here as a H1B, then based on that job, five other jobs are created for American workers. May not be STEM jobs, maybe administrative jobs, for which there are plenty of American workers available, or business related job, MBA or BBA, business administration related jobs. So that's what the research has found. So cities that uh, get more H-1Bs, and this is of course just random because it's based on the lottery, they see that the job market uh, improves in those cities and more jobs are created. Um, I mean, Bill Gates said that Microsoft has found that for every H-1B hire we make, we add on an average of 4 additional employees to support them in various capacities. Bill Gates has said this. So even though the results may seem counterintuitive, it's a fact that more American jobs are created when more vacancies are filled by high-skilled workers, right? So this is something to keep in mind. And as I said, restricting H-1B visas just basically leads to offshoring. As I was saying that, um, all those jobs just go out of the country, and that's a loss of so much uh, loss to the economy because all other industries boom when one job is created. There's a boom in real estate, there's a boom in spending, there's a boom in retail. So it's a domino effect. When one H-1B is restricted, it restricts the entire economy in so many ways. So yeah, I would, Nipasa, to answer your question, I think it indicates, filling of the cap this year and all the previous years indicates that there's a high demand and the demand is not being met.
It's true. So true. Thank you so much, Prashanthi, for the detailed explanation and for helping us understand this better. Let's address some of our viewers' questions now. I think we should, and let's take up Sneha's first. I was selected in this year's lottery, but my employer delayed filing the petition. Now that the cap is hit, does that mean my application is no longer valid?
Well, if you did not file the application in the 90 days period that was given to you, you cannot file it now. If you've already filed it, then you don't have an issue. Your application will be processed even if there is a delay in processing it. So the cap
Okay.
does not have any effect on a petition which has already been filed. And if the petition was not filed, then whether the cap is reached or not reached, you cannot file it again, because even if there was another lottery, you will not be selected in the other lottery because you were already selected.
There you go, Sneha. Thank you so much, Prashanthi, for taking this up. And now let's go on to Ritika's question. How does the H-1B cap being reached impact the timing and planning for fiscal year 2026 filings? And what steps can employers and individuals take now to prepare for the next filing season?
So I guess in order to prepare the next filing season, you have to make sure that you've done your homework, make sure that you have identified, of course, don't miss the deadline. That's the most important thing. So keep an eye out for when the registration opens up. Ensure that your employer has all the necessary information for them to file the registration. So do some homework to see what information is needed. There's not much information needed, simply a copy of the applicant's passport. And also, you need some information with reference to the company, the address, the federal ID number, phone number, other contact information, the signature, etc. of the employer. So ensure that you use either an attorney or you are well aware of how to file a CAP registration, because if you do it wrong, or if you don't pay the fee correctly, or if your fee doesn't go through because the bank has blocked your credit card or something like that, then you will
Mhm.
not be successful in your CAP registration. So make sure all these tips are followed for the next year before you file your registration. Keep yourself informed, most importantly. Um, with reference to timing, um, you should at least do all the preliminary work. Start it now. Identify the employees that you're hiring. If you're an employee, then identify the businesses that are going to register for you for the CAP. So I think you should start now, um, and be aware of what is needed to file a registration to start off with. And then after that, once your registration is picked, then you would go into the other information with reference to how to file a H-1B petition. And you can, then look into that information and make sure that you have all that ready. You do have 90 days, but the sooner you file it, the better. So first step is registration, making sure you have all the information for that. And the second step is, if you get picked, then making sure that you have all the information required to file the H-1B petition within the 90 days period.
Right, right. Thank you so much for taking that up, Prashanthi, for Ritika. And I think now we should go to Hari's question. This is also on YouTube. Hari's asking, we submitted our AOS I-485 in September 2021 when FAD is current. PD 8 2013 India, I-140 approved in 2016. Now my elder kid is turning 21 in the coming month. How do I make sure he is protected under CSPA? Thanks.
He's as long as he's filed adjustment of status, and the application is the 485 is pending, he's already protected. And even if he turns 21, it does not affect his green card application. So you should be good.
Okay. So, Hari, if you have any further questions, you can keep commenting. But thank you for participating. And thank you, Prashanthi, for taking that up. And now we have Hardeep's question. How likely will the percentage of H-1B registrations selected for fiscal year 2025 be higher than in the first selection round last year for the fiscal year 2024 cap?
I think it'll be the same as last year. I don't expect that they will select a higher percentage of H-1B registrations. I know why you're asking that. You're thinking that maybe they expect that a lower percentage will file H1s, and therefore they'll select a higher percentage. I don't think they'll do that. They'll do, they'll follow a measured approach, because they can't be sure how many people will actually file H1s after they get the registration picked. Um, So they'll follow a measured approach and go, step by step. They will pick a more number than required, because historically there is a certain percentage of H1s that are not filed even after getting selected in the lottery. But I think
Mhm.
they will take a two-step approach, and they will do a second lottery rather than trying to pick as many as possible in the first lottery.
Right. Right. Thank you so much for taking that up, Prashanthi. And Hardeep, if you have any further questions, please keep commenting. Thank you for participating with your question. Let's move on to our questions, Prashanthi. And, for companies sponsoring H-1B applicants, what strategies can they adopt for future cap seasons to increase the odds of their employees getting selected?
Well, we know that the lottery system, it's a lottery system, so it's a random lottery system, so it's really hard to um, do anything to increase or decrease your luck. But there are some things that can be done. Number one, try to if you have a U.S. master's degree, use your U.S. master's degree for the registration, as long as it's related to your degree. Um, but you have to keep in mind that the U.S. master's degree has to be from uh, a private, for a not from a non not a public organization, or a private not-for-profit. So it cannot be a private for-profit university. Um, then you will not qualify for the lottery under the master's cap. So try to use your US Masters, because the US Masters has a separate 20,000 lottery numbers. So that definitely a person with a US Masters has a better chance of being picked in the lottery than a person with a bachelor's degree. US Masters people get two picks in the lottery. They first get run into the Masters lottery, and then if they don't get picked, they get run again into the Bachelor's lottery. So they have higher chances because they run twice, and also because there's a separate 20,000 Masters cap for US Masters degree holders or higher. This goes without saying, file multiple years, keep filing. So don't wait until the last year that your OPT is expiring to file your H1. So mathematically speaking, filing a H1 cap multiple years increases your overall chance of becoming successful in getting picked in the lottery. Therefore, in every opportunity to get, please make sure you file that lottery, um, file the registration for the lottery. Um, so, if you're in a STEM, then you get most probably 3 years in a row you can file for the lottery. So make sure you make use of all those 3 years. Um, so again, find alternative ways to get picked. I mean, alternative ways. If the H-1B is not picked, then I guess you'll have to find alternative work visas, that like we discussed. Um, so try to find that if you're not able to get picked and you're not successful. Also, sometimes you might be a master's degree, but you might not have completed your master's degree. See if you can still file a registration and a master's cap even though you have not completed it. Perhaps if you have completed all the requirements towards it, but you don't have the actual degree, you would still qualify. Um, so you might be able to do it that way. So see if there are any other alternative ways of doing it. File a registration with multiple employers. Now, this is a little tricky because USCIS specifically prohibits multiple H-1B filings with the same employer or with different employers if there's collusion between the employers. But if you are approaching separate employers independently, and if there is a separate job that is being offered through each employer, separate job meaning the client is different, the job is completely different, it's not the same client and several employers are filing for you. So if that's the case, then you should file multiple. But now, unfortunately, even if you file for multiple employers since this year, they've removed that incentive, and that, so you will only be picked once even if you file for multiple employers. So that no longer holds good. Of course, file a perfect application. That's number 5. Make sure you don't make any mistakes. Um, make sure your H-1B is properly prepared, your registration is properly done, the credit card doesn't get declined. So all that, make sure it's a perfect application. Uh, so you will get maximize your chances of getting the H-1B approval.
For sure, for sure. Thank you so much, Prashanthi, for taking that up. And we should address Girish's question on YouTube now. Girish is asking, how has the insertion of the H-1B visa cap evolving industry trends and shifting immigration policies between 2025 and 2020, sorry, 2015 and 2025 impacted the diversity of talent acquisition strategies?
I think with the unavailability of numbers, visa numbers, or the shortage of visa numbers, what has happened is employers are looking outside the country to find talent, and they're moving the entire job outside the country. So, as I said, a lot of jobs have moved to Canada, a lot of jobs have moved to India. Given you the example of Microsoft. Um, so, yeah, that's how it's affected. Jobs have basically moved outside the country.
Thank you so much for taking that up for Girish. And
So
Girish,
they're
if you have
talking.
any more questions, yeah.
Girish is also talking about startups versus established tech giants. So startups have more issues, obviously, with filing or getting H-1B approvals and versus or getting talent into the country versus the tech giants. And being a smaller company is definitely more difficult for people to get their talent, mainly because larger companies, number one, they have more immigration options. They have better staff who knows about immigration and is able to go through all the loopholes. Also, they have the ability to find talent outside the country and continue to be competitive. Like Microsoft opens offices all over the world and finds the talent they need wherever they need it, if they're not able to get it here, right? But as a startup, you don't have those kind of resources to open up offices outside the country and to tap foreign talent outside the country and get them working remotely outside the country, because then you have to set up offices there in other countries. So you have to have the money and the resources to be able to do that. So finding talent outside and retaining them is not possible for small businesses, while it is for large companies. Also, large companies have the option of filing blanket L1 applications, L1A and L1B. This is pretty much gives them an unlimited stream of talent that they're able to tap and bring to the US. Small companies don't have that because you have to be a large company to be able to qualify for an L1 blanket. Of course, there are issues with L1 blanket as well, but definitely a good resource for big companies to tap into. So also their employees have a higher chance of getting a visa approved rather than a smaller company, higher chances of getting a H-1B approved with USCIS, not only a visa with Department of State, again, because um, it's a larger company. And USCIS also, unfortunately, discriminates with reference to their processing if it's a smaller startup when compared to a larger established Microsoft type company.
For sure. Thank you so much for taking that up in details for Girish. Girish, I hope you've got your answers. And if you have any more questions, keep commenting. Let's take up Ravi's question now. With masters from India, do I qualify for STEM category?
With Masters from India, do I STEM category? I don't understand what STEM category means. Are you talking about OPT STEM?
STEM OPT, I think, yes.
Yeah, can you please be more elaborate as to what you mean by STEM category? What STEM category? F1 OPT STEM? Then you have to have a master's in the US in the STEM category to qualify for STEM OPT.
Okay. Ravi, we would like to know more about you. And in fact, you can also call us up, on this number 425-436-6335 and dial in this access code 988-888. Say hello after that, we'll be able to hear you. And hi, Rag. Thank you so much for joining. Rag says hello, Nipasa and Prashanthi. Rag, please feel free to join us on this call also, or yes, just comment your question. We will address it soon. Let's move on, Prashanthi. Now, if you could tell us, given the limited number of H-1B visas and the high volume of applicants, do you think the lottery system is still the fairest way to allocate these visas? Why or why not?
There are arguments for and against, with reference to whether the lottery is like a blind system is the best way, or should the numbers be allocated based on where the need is, or where the country needs them, which the industry with where the country needs them, right? So, such as high demand areas such as IT or healthcare, etc. So, the argument for, of course, there is. Let's talk about whether it's the arguments for the lottery system. Is this a good way of allocating H-1B numbers, because there is oversubscription, and earlier it used to be first come first serve, but that was chaos because all the cases, thousands of applications were filed in one day, and then they would just reject applications that the excess applications, and there was no system on the basis of which they were rejecting them, because all of them were being received on the same day, right? So now they're trying to follow a system which is like a lottery system. So and then there is 90 days to file it. So it's a better system compared to the previous one. The lottery system grants equal opportunity. There's transparency in the process, and administratively it's easy. So you don't have uh, thousands and thousands of pages of applications sitting in USCIS being and having to be processed and being sent back if they are not um, approved under the lottery and they're not selected under the
Yes.
lottery. That was the previous system. So definitely the new system is better in that way because it's fairer, and administratively it's much, much better. But there are arguments against the lottery system also, because if you're leaving it to chance, which is what a lottery is, it's not merit based. So you're not considering the applicant's skills or experience or the applicant's potential to contribute to the US economy before deciding whether to give them the number or not.
Hmm.
Highly qualified individuals may be left out, while people less qualified will be selected because of the pure chance of the lottery.
Yes.
It discourages innovation because there's no incentive for employers to seek out the most exceptional talent, right? Or people with master's degree or maybe 10 years of experience, because the qualification for a H-1B is the same for everyone. So what changes can be made because of this? What are the potential alternatives to the lottery system to allocate H-1B numbers? I guess you could have a merit-based system where you prioritize and give numbers to those applicants based on factors like education or work experience or skills. Or you can allocate numbers based on industry specific. So say if you are a hospital or you're in the healthcare industry, you can give a certain allocation of of visas, H-1B visas to them, maybe to nurses, to doctors. Um, or you can just, the best alternative is to increase the H-1B cap, because we know that the numbers that are presently there are three times that are being filed. So you have to increase the cap by three times to meet the demand. So
Okay.
that's, in a nutshell, what the alternatives are and what I think about of the present lottery system.
Visa lottery system. Yes. Thank you so much, Prashanti. Thank you for taking that up. Rag is here with his question now. But before that, let's take up Ravi's. Ma'am, I meant the H-1B under master's cap for masters from India.
Okay. I'm glad we asked the question and he
Yes, I'm glad.
responded. Yeah, a master's cap. To qualify for a master's cap, you have to have a US master's degree. So it cannot be an Indian master's degree.
Okay. So, Ravi, unfortunately, I do not think you qualify for the H-1B master's cap then.
Unless he does
Thank you,
he
Prashanti.
does a master's degree. he
Again,
can qualify.
another
Yeah,
one.
if he does a master's degree in something else, then he could qualify.
Mhm. Okay. All the best, Ravi. And now let's take up Rags. Rag is saying, what about the tech non-profits as compared to startups and the big companies?
There is no. I mean, is he talking about what about what? I mean, what is the question? The chances of getting a H-1 visa, or is this a continuation of the previous question? Uh, I can't hear you, Nipasa.
Rag, if you could be more specific with what you want to know, maybe give us more details on your question, it would be, I mean, more
Yeah,
convenient
rather
for us
than
to answer.
me presuming what you're saying, and yeah, ask the question completely.
Yes. And Ravi
It's
says,
easier for
thank you.
the
Okay, Abbas now. We have this is
viewers
on.
also that.
Right, right. We have Abbas's question from Prashanti's channel. So really good to have you, Abbas. If I have one of my company will file H-1B, can I work with the other company without filing H-1B? They are same job title while I'm in OPT and applying for H-1B. Thanks.
Um, so again, the fact scenario is not clear, but looks like the person is on working for another company on OPT and wants to know if they can continue to work on OPT while the H1 is being filed. Yes, you can. You only need to move to that company which files your H1 once it's October 1st if it's a cap case, or the H1B is approved, whichever is later. Then you need to move to the employer that's actually filed your H1B cap. You cannot continue to work for the previous employer.
Okay. Thank you for taking that up for Abbas. Abbas, I hope you got your answer. If you have more questions or you need more clarifications, keep commenting. I think now we have some more questions, Prashanti, and these are from our Facebook groups. So I'd like control to please display them. Let's take up this first one. For Dropbox H1B, is there any fingerprinting process or direct Dropbox?
There's no fingerprinting process as far as I know. I think it's just a Dropbox. And this because Dropbox is available for people who have previously had, filed a visa.
Okay,
So the presumption is they already have your fingerprints on record. But again, I could be wrong. So I can look that up and answer if there's any fingerprints.
sure. Sure, Prashanti. And while we check that, maybe we can read out this next question. This is from an anonymous member. I am on H-1B visa. Now my mother is in ICU. If I am traveling to my home country and while returning, is there any issues? My spouse and my newborn kid will stay in the USA. And please let me know what all documents do I need to carry along with me. Thanks in advance.
I'm presuming this question is because Trump administration is going to come to power, so everybody's worried about traveling, at least until things are more clear. Um, so I think, I mean, I don't expect that the laws will be significantly changed over this short term period, because in order to change the laws, there is a certain process and we will be given notice. But what will happen is become more difficult. There'll be more scrutiny on everything. There'll be more requests for documentation. So I with reference to this particular aspect of traveling and coming back um, on a valid visa, and if you have, as long as you have a valid job, etc., there shouldn't be any problems, but they might ask for more documents. So make sure that you carry everything with you, including your pay stubs to show that you're in status, your H-1B approval, of course. If you can carry the original, that'll be great. And be ready to be prepared to answer any questions. Make sure you're in status. You file the required amendments if needed. If you've changed job location, you are getting paid the salary as per the LCA. So make sure you're meeting all the conditions of the H1. Don't take it for granted. Review your petition, carry a copy of your H1B petition, ask that from your employer. And I would just be more careful rather than presuming that they'll just brush you through like they usually do. They just wave you through, right, at the port of entry.
Mhm.
So presume the worst and go prepared.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prashanthi, for addressing this one. Let's move on to our next. This is another anonymous member asking, last year in September, my husband moved to the US on an H-1B visa and I joined him on an H-4 visa. Unfortunately, this September, he was laid off. To maintain lawful status, we applied for a change of status to B2 before the grace period ended, and USCIS has confirmed they received our application. Our B2 status is valid until April. In the meantime, I've been admitted to a nursing school to complete my prerequisites, and I'm eager to stay here to pursue my career in nursing. I plan to apply for an F1 visa, and once my husband secures a new job and returns to H-1B status, I intend to continue my studies. Has anyone have has anyone been in a similar situation? And what are the chances of my F1 visa being approved under these circumstances? I would love to hear your experiences or advice.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who are in similar circumstances. In fact, every week I get several phone calls, almost once a day, from people who have been laid off and are trying to explore how to remain in the country and what to do with the 60 days grace if they don't get a job within that 60 days, because 60 days is not a long time to find a job, right? So most people do file for a change of status to a B2 or an F1. It depends on what their long-term plans are. Um, I have not seen issues with change of status from a 60 days grace to an F1. They are asking for proof that you're maintaining your residence in India, and they're asking for property documentation, proof of residence, etc., Aadhaar card or whatever ID cards if you're from India.
Mhm.
So they are sending RFUs related to that, and also proof that you have money to, uh, you know, uh, to continue your education or to pay for your tuition. So these are some questions they're asking about the F1. But in your situation, since you have a pending B2 application and you don't have the actual B2 approval, and you'll be filing an F1 um, from the pending B2 application, um, there might be a question of what is your present status, and they might send an RFE asking for proof that you have an approved B2. But USCIS has again said that they will accept bridging petitions. So hopefully, unless the new administration comes and changes that, you should be able to file for a change of status from a pending B2 to an F1.
Okay. Thank you for
Nipasa,
taking that up, Prashanti.
sorry,
Yeah.
Nipasa, I have one more minute, and after that, I have somewhere to be. So
Sure, sure. Let's take up a buzz's question quickly then because he's here. So it's a continuation. Because I couldn't find a full-time job, I had one company I'm working with. They will file an H-1B, but I still have other job offers for another part-time. But they said they won't file H-1B. Can I work for both without affecting my OPT status? He's asking.
you can't, you should file, as I said again, you have to file the H1 because you have to file within that period of time. You don't want to lose your uh, H1 if you get picked in the lottery. And you cannot work for the second company on OPT unless you file your H1 for consular processing. Then your H1 will not get converted to a H1 until you leave the country and come back. In which case, you can continue working on your OPT for that company and then change to the H1 employer when you want to by leaving the country and coming back on a H1 visa. But you cannot work for both OPT and H1 at the same time.
Okay. Thank you so much for taking that up, Abbas. And thank you, Abbas, for your question. Thank you for participating. And Okay, last but not the least, does the USCIS have a bias for or against grant taking nonprofit tech initiatives?
I don't see why there should be a bias
Okay.
for
Thank you,
nonprofits
Rag.
or yeah. I don't see that there will be a bias. I don't see a reason why.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prashanthi, for answering so many of our questions, especially our viewers' questions. I'm sure they must have all benefited, watching us here in the session and learning so much from the session. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to having you back once again in the coming week.
Thank you, Nipasa. Take care. See you next week.
Thank you, Prashanthi. Have a great day. And folks, you can always contact Attorney Prashanthi Reddy. You can write to her, you can email her or call her on this number 212-354-1010. And her email address is prashanthi@reddyesq.com. And go visit www.reddyesq.com to get to know more about Attorney Prashanthi Reddy and the law offices of Prashanthi Reddy. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. But stay tuned on Immigration and Jobs Talk Show because we have more sessions coming up like these. And yes, check out our space. For now, it's Nipasa saying bye. Have a great day ahead.